I wanted you to see that I dressed up for our class tonight.
So anyway, I thought that was funny. That was a Christmas gift. I mean, I'm so many of you, and to meet you. And my husband and I are local, so there's a whole different other church out there at 8:30 and 9:30 or whatever. So this is wonderful to see y'all. And obviously, this is a passion of mine and something that's very near and dear to my heart. And I'm so happy Valina asked me to share this with you guys. Those of you who know me and follow me on social media or whatever it is that I'm into, it's out there. So Valina has seen her share of tea parties and teacups and that kind of thing. So that's how she knew about my passion for tea. So welcome, everybody. I've got this little book, and the way I wanted to get us started tonight was to reading from, because I think a cup of tea and a good spirit reading, be it your Bible or something like that I'm going to read to you, is just a lovely, lovely way to have a moment of quiet. We all need some quiet in our world. When we are busy and we're active and we're engaged and we're talking, we can't hear God speak to us and need quiet times. And that's one of the goals for you as a result of this class, that I hope that you will embrace tea and maybe use that as your quiet time. But share with you this, first of all, from Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. Whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good repute, if there is any excellence, worth of praise, dwell on these things. And to me, that's what the ritual of tea can be. It is a lovely respite from all this craziness that we live in the world. And if you've got kids and just jobs and life and all that, we need a little respite. So I hope you are joining me in a cup of tea. And what I want to read to you now is called The Blessing of Tea, and it's from this Tea Lover's Devotional by Emily Barnes. So this is not very long, so indulge me. The Blessing of Tea. And it starts out with a quote from Henry James: "There are few hours in life more agreeable than the hour dedicated to the ceremony known as afternoon tea. If you really want to, you can grab a quick cup of tea. You can drive by the fast food window and collect a foam cup full of hot water with a little plastic lid, a packet of sweetener, and a tea bag. Then you can sit there in the drive-through lane while others honk behind you, lift the lid, stick in the little gauze bag, and set your tea in the cup holder to steep while you steer back out into traffic. Or if you're in a hurry at home or at the office, you can always heat a mug of water in the microwave. Then you can plunk in your tea bag or stir in some spiced tea mix and carry the whole thing back to your desk to gulp while you are at work." Guilty of that. You really can do that if you prefer, but I hope you won't do it anymore. You see, if you insist on instant, you'll get your tea, but you'll miss one of tea's most beneficial, beautiful benefits: the blessing of slowing down to enjoy it. You'll be having your tea, but you're losing the opportunity to stake out an island of calm serenity in the chaotic ocean of life. Whether your tea time is simple or elaborate, a solitary moment or a friendly gathering, it can help make room for stillness in even the most frantic day. As a result, its potential for stress reduction is enormous. Tea takes time, and that's part of the magic. You can't hurry it without losing something vital. The act of making and drinking tea forces us to slow down. And I truly believe our bodies and spirits are just for us today. People in our society don't like to wait, but you simply cannot hurry a good pot of tea. You put the kettle on, then you must wait for the water to boil. And while you're waiting, there are little things to attend to. You rinse out the teapot, you fill the milk pitcher and the sugar bowl and set out your teacup, the prettiest one if you have one. You might even pick a flower or set a candle in a holder or rummage through the cabinet for a pretty plate. Even if you haven't had time to bake, you can open a package of cookies and arrange them on a plate. No, none of these are absolutely necessary. You can always go back to microwaving water and fishing your cookie directly out of the package. You can drink your tea standing up at the counter or gulp it as you run out the door. But again, you'll be missing the opportunity. You see, boiling the water in a kettle is part of the ritual. Arranging the tea tray is part of the ritual. Preparing and enjoying tea is a ritual itself. I love what my friend calls it, a ceremony of loveliness. And I believe with all my heart that human beings crave ritual and ceremony and loveliness in our lives. Enrich your life with blessings that tea brings to your life. Service, hospitality, generosity, ritual, sharing, tradition, comfort, and so much more. And it has a prayer in here, and even though we've already prayed, I'll share this. Father God, let one of my most important rituals be to give thanks to you in all things. I want to share this practice with others as I live gratitude out in my words and actions. Amen. So that sums up kind of why I wanted to share this with you all tonight. And it's going to be a quick 45 minutes. I'm not going to go into a lot of the deep details of all this, but I just want to, teach you a little bit about the things that you need to know and make sure that I answer your questions. So what is tea? All tea comes from one plant that's called the Camellia sinensis plant. Harder to say than it is to drink. The Camellia sinensis plant. So it's kind of like only real champagne comes from the Champagne region of France. Real tea comes from this one plant. And what happens is it's oxidized, which means it's exposed to air, and that's how different types of tea are created. That's called oxidation. So if you think about an avocado, if you've got an avocado and you leave it out, the longer it stays out, the blacker it gets, right? It's going to turn brown and eventually black. So oxidation is kind of like that. So I want to show you some teas, and there are lots of different varieties of teas, but I'm just going to show you the top level, the most common ones. This is a sample of green tea. I'm going to move my camera and see if I can show y'all. Takes a little bit more coordination than I've got. Can you see that pretty good? That is green tea. Now, green tea isn't dried or oxidized with air. It's basically fermented with steam. So that's why you can still see some of the greenness. Now this, maybe I should do it like that. This is a black tea. So you see the difference between a black tea and a green tea. This is the green and this is the black. The black has been oxidized and exposed to that oxidation air process longer than the green tea. This is what we call an oolong tea, and an oolong is kind of in the middle. I'll put it in the middle. You see that the texture is a little bit different. It's not as fine as the black tea. See, there's the black tea, here's the oolong, and then the green. So with a little bit of practice, you can tell, you'll learn to recognize, oh, this is a black tea that I just got served. Oh, this is a green tea I got served. The last tea I want to show you tonight is a rooibos tea. Now, if you look at it in comparison to the other colors, you see that it's red, right? Rooibos, R-O-O-I-B-O-S. It comes from South Africa, the red bush. It's called red bush. So if you think about rooibos, red bush, all rooibos tea comes from the red bush in South Africa. I like rooibos teas a lot because rooibos teas do not have caffeine. Green teas do have caffeine. Now, some people think that green tea doesn't have caffeine. It does. And you'll hear a lot about the medical or the health benefits of green tea. But just remember that it does have caffeine. Let me see if I can get this camera back on here. Okay. So rooibos is red from the red bush, your green tea, oolong, and then your black tea. So those are, again, there's white tea, there's a pu'er tea, there's a couple of other different kinds of teas, but these are the main things. So again, rooibos is different than an herbal tea. Herbal teas do not have caffeine in them. Most herbal teas don't have any of the Camellia sinensis plant in it. So that's why herbal teas don't have any caffeine. So if you're like me, I'm a little sensitive to caffeine. So I drink a lot of rooibos, and I do drink a lot of herbal teas, especially at night. And what I'm drinking tonight with my pretty teacup is a rooibos tea, and you can see how red bush rooibos, because it doesn't have any caffeine. Okay, so, I wanted to share a little bit of the history with you. The history of tea is really, really long, and you guys don't need to know all that. I got two stories that I want you to know about the history of tea. One is, rumor has it, or folklore has it, that the second emperor of China invented tea because he was on a journey and he had his people with him, and they had stopped for the night to camp. And the habit or the ritual was to drink hot water. So they were making the hot water, and a plant blew into the vessel or whatever, the bowl, whatever it was he was drinking his hot water out of. And the emperor noticed it, and he tasted it, and he decided it probably, I guess it didn't taste very good. It was a little bit bitter, but he decided it probably had really good health or medicinal benefits to it. So they say that that's one of the legends of how tea came to be. So I know when I first got into tea, and I kind of meant to tell y'all how all that happened. It's not a very interesting story. So if we have time, I'll go back to that. But, we think of the British, Downton Abbey and Bridgerton and, all that. That tea is really an English thing, but it started in China. Now, eventually it came to the United States. Tea was introduced to the United States in New York, which was New Amsterdam at the time. It came to us before it even went to London. So, and that was back in 1650, 1650 is when it came to New York. And then it went to England. The story that I'm going to tell y'all next is about from the history is the Duchess of Bedford. What was her name? Anna? I'm looking at my notes. The Duchess of Bedford, Anna Maria. She's the one that introduced afternoon tea, right? The ritual of afternoon tea, where we had those pretty little tea sandwiches and the little scones and all that. So dinner was, back in those days, dinner was really, really late, like 8 or 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So by mid-afternoon, Anna Maria would have a sinking spell. And so she started taking afternoon tea around 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock, and she took it in her bedroom. And that's how afternoon tea came to be. She invited a very good friend of hers into her bedchamber to have tea with her. And this very good friend just happened to be Queen Victoria. So Anna of Bedford is the one that introduced Queen Victoria to the ritual of afternoon tea. And Queen Victoria is the one that started the afternoon tea party that they still have at Buckingham Palace, that Queen Elizabeth still does today. Queen Victoria started that as a result of this, starting this, hanging out with her girlfriend in the bedroom. So that's the only tea history we're good. All right, so next let's talk about, let me see if there's anything else I want to tell y'all. No. Let's talk about some tea etiquette. And I have my handy dandy tea partner here with me. Can you scoot your chair around? My husband, Bill. Most of you know Bill. He's my good tea partner, and he's gonna, we're gonna talk about some etiquette, and I'm gonna have him demonstrate some things, and we're gonna talk through them, and see if you can if you'll notice. But he does have a story to tell you about what some of the the stigma of, oh, you're going to a tea party. Oh, you're having afternoon tea. Tell him your story from work this afternoon.
So I was at work and I told my boss I had to go home because I had to help my wife. She was doing a tea class for church. So he instantly pretended he was holding a little cup up and he stuck his pinky out. And so as Sandra's going to tell you, that's a no-no. So you don't do that.
Yeah, tea is not the stuffy thing. And that's been my experience. I am a member of the Virginia Tea Society, and I'm on the board of directors, and we have 10 teas a year, one a month on a Saturday. And anytime somebody knows I'm going to, you're going to tea. Oh, well, tea used to be, this is a little bit more history, I guess. Tea used to be, really, really expensive. Like back in the day, Anna of Bedford, tea was really expensive. So only the most affluent and the wealthiest people in society could drink tea. So that's where that sort of, highfalutin thing kind of came from. And those people did keep their pinky up. But nowadays that's considered very faux pas. To have your pinky up, unless you want to be perceived as persnickety or whatever. So Bill will demonstrate no pinkies up. No pinkies up. So we have a 2.5-year-old granddaughter. I don't know, we're having tea parties and it may be fun to kind of teach her to have her pinky up, but I don't know what happens with that. So would you like to demonstrate some other faux pas that you're not supposed to do? All right, so they can see you, make sure they can see you. So he's being very noisy. You're not supposed to make noise at tea. Stir, you're supposed to stir it around and not clink. You don't want to clink your cup.
Oh, I think I need some lemon for my tea.
Make sure they can see you. All right, he's squeezing his lemon with his fingers in his tea. That's kind of common sense that you probably shouldn't be squeezing your lemon with your fingers. So don't do that. Okay, so you can see what happened. You all know better than this, I'm sure. Don't be leaving your spoon in your teacup when you're drinking, and you don't want to put your dirty spoon down on your tablecloth. You want to leave it in your tea saucer. No slurping. He's a very good slurper. So you can see that the tea rules aren't that hard. A lot of it makes sense. If you have black tea, some people like milk with their tea. Now, milk, not cream, because what do you think would happen if you put cream into hot tea? It would curdle, okay? I'm sure that's what you were saying in your mind. So you don't use cream, you use milk. I don't use milk in my black tea, but most people only use it with their black tea. I don't know if I don't drink a lot of the, of that kind, so I don't know. The other thing is, like with the lemon and the milk, you typically don't do those two things together because, again, your lemon will spoil your milk. You might use your lemon for like your herbal teas or your rooibos teas. And maybe you could use lemon in any of them, but don't do milk and lemon because then you'll get curdled tea and that won't be very good. So there is that. I would love to stop. I hesitate. I would love to be able to ask you guys if you have questions, but we'll make sure that we get all your questions answered at the end. A couple of things now. I read this pretty little thing about afternoon tea, and you can make it a whole ritual, but I do use tea bags. There are some, don't use Lipton tea, but there are some good tea companies out there that make some nice tea bags. I will do that a lot of time at nighttime. So I'm not anti-tea bag, but I just want to encourage you to try something new so that you can really learn to appreciate this whole ritual. So a couple of things I want to show you. The best trick, you guys are familiar with tea bags like Lipton tea, and there are others, but this is a quick and easy thing. These are called tea sacks. You can get them off of Amazon. And I use these for a cup of tea or in my tea pots. They're disposable. They're not, I don't think, as good as brewing the tea directly in the hot water or in, something like a mesh strainer. I've got a couple of different kinds of mesh strainers that I got out tonight to show you guys. You can use these, clean them out, rinse them off. You can reuse those. But these are really convenient and easy. So you put a teaspoon of tea in there for a teacup of tea. And then I twist the top like so, and I guess I'll just put it back down in my tea, and then I put it back in my teacup like so. Now, there is one bad thing. If you've got your water in your teacup and you put your tea bag in here, the water will seep into this and it will start leaking. So this can be kind of messy. It's convenient, it's easy, but it can be kind of messy. And that's where, something like one of these tea balls, this is what I've got that will go down into a teapot. Now I've got the littlest teapot that I own out tonight because Bill and I are just having enough for this meeting. But you can see how something this shape will definitely go down in a teapot, whereas this big old ball would never go into that teapot. So, those are the kinds of things that you need to think about. You can just make a cup of tea, or if you want a little pot for tea for two, you can do that. So these are really handy. The place where I get all my teas, you can buy loose tea from a lot of different places. I know that Fresh Market, for example, has some nice Harney and Son bagged tea or tea sachets. I'm sure that they've probably got loose leaf tea. I buy all my tea from, it used to be called Quentin's Tea Emporium. It's down on Virginia Beach Boulevard, near the Rose Hill Shops, near Worth the Wait, if you know Worth the Wait, right past the Francis something house. Somebody knows what I'm talking about. But anyway, it's right down there. It's now called Sova. Yes. It's now called Sova, Southern Virginia Tea Company. But if you Google Quentin's, or if you go on Facebook and look up Quentin's or Sova, S-O-V-A, it'll come up. And that's where I get my loose leaf teas. I think you can probably get them at Wegmans, probably Trader Joe's. There's a lot of places you can get loose leaf teas. But the thing, and I did not talk to the owner of Sova before I did this tonight, but the thing I like about going to Sova is, well, except when we're in COVID, you get to smell of the teas, you get to look at them, you can ask questions. These people are knowledgeable. If you go into a Wegmans and ask them about, what do you think about the black tea versus the oolong they're not going to know any of that stuff. So it's kind of like buying running shoes from a department store. Those people don't know running, whereas a running shoe store, those employees are a little bit trained a little bit better. So I do love Quentin's. They are not a tea room where you can have afternoons, but they are a retail area. So I wanted to tell you that. The other thing I want to mention is I only use my teacups for tea. I do not drink my coffee in my teacups. I've got this is a really cool mug. Look, it came with a little mesh thing. It's got a saucer, and it's got things like this you can find at Sova. This is very convenient and easy, and I like to have sometimes my tea in here because, again, it's easy. It's not as messy as the disposable tea bags, but that's just another thing that you can do. So I don't put coffee in my tea pots or my teacups, because with porcelain or fine china, that coffee flavor is going to eventually soak into that tea, and I want a pure tea experience. I also don't wash my teacups and my teapots with soap. I basically rinse them out, maybe soda water or vinegar, because there again, I just don't want that soap residue in my tea. The type of water you use can make a difference in a tea. And you guys hear that when you learn about making coffee. You have to have good water. We're, in Larchmont in Norfolk, Norfolk has very good filtered water. So I think our water is just fine. You don't want to use distilled water. You don't want to use spring water. That will make your tea very flat and icky, slimy. You want to use, a good filtered water, or spring water. If you want to buy a water, spring water would be the best thing to do. So I wanted to tell you about that. Now, when it comes to brewing your tea, the different types of tea, the green, the oolong, the rooibos, the herbal, the black tea, they do have different brewing times. If you overbrew a tea, it'll get bitter, which is like a taste, or it will feel to your tongue astringent. So sometimes it happens. So if you get a cup of tea and you have either one of those reactions, that tea has been overbrewed. If you overbrew your tea, you do not make it better by just adding water. You're just going to have watered down astringent or bitter tea. So you got to start over. And, I'm very fortunate that I've been to some really lovely places to have afternoon tea, all over the world. And not everybody knows how to even serve tea when you're paying a lot of money for it. So those kinds of things can happen. So, but maybe that's T201. We could talk about that. But anyway. Oh, Bill's looking at chat too, but Valina. Steeping the tea. So black tea steeps for 3 to 5 minutes. Most of the other teas steep for 1 to 3 minutes. At Sova, where I get my tea, it'll tell you on the bag how long to steep your tea for. So there's steeping time, and there's also how hot you get your water. Most of the teas you can bring your water to boiling. 212 degrees is boiling, right? Don't let it boil to death. But for like some of the other teas, and if I had a handout, or if I have a way to get this to you guys, I'll give you a little chart that I have that shows the type of teas, how long you should steep them, and how hot your temperature should be. Honestly, I've got an electric kettle. When that kettle gets ready to I can hear starting to boil. I just turn it off. So maybe they measure. I don't have a tea kettle that measures the temperature, and that would be great. Maybe these days, but I don't think 1 or 2 degrees is going to make that big of a difference. But good question, because you do steep it for different amounts of time based on the type it is. And again, if there's a way I start to you, if you go buy tea at Sova, or if you go to the Sova website, it'll be on there.
If you add milk, should it be hot?
If you add milk, should it be hot? That's a really good question. I don't drink milk in my black tea, but lots of people do. We at the Virginia Tea Society teas, our milk is never warmed, but I certainly think the longer you let it set out, because it's going to cool your tea down if you put super duper cold milk in your tea. So that's a great question, but maybe room temperature and before kernels.
Is there a difference between afternoon tea and high tea?
Oh, afternoon tea and high tea. Thank you. This is what makes me a tea snob. So you hear about this all the time. I should have covered this in etiquette. I'm sorry. It's one of the key things. You'll hear about, high tea, or you'll hear afternoon tea. Okay, there's high tea and low tea. Afternoon tea is low tea. High tea is what people like to use. They like to use that term because they think that's where they have the pretty little sandwiches on the little 3-tiered curate, tiered tray. It's called a curate. And they think, oh, that's nice and fancy, so that must be a high tea. like the Downton Abbey servants that stayed down in hung out in the basement. They were the ones having high tea. High tea is like their dinner. It's a meal. It's not afternoon tea with little savories and petit fours and finger sandwiches. That is afternoon tea. So you don't hear anything else from me tonight. Use those terms correctly, because a lot of people say, oh, you're going to high tea. No, I'm going to afternoon tea. And a lot of times, some of the really nice hotels that have tea, that serve tea, they will have you sitting in the, a low table, at a low table on a sofa, low tea. That's where the nice afternoon tea should be. Of course, you could also be sitting at a table or whatever, but if anybody uses the term high tea, you're having a meal. You're not having afternoon tea. So I'm so glad you guys asked that question.
Some say you should not reheat the water in case you forgot to brew. Does it mean you use new water?
This was a question, I don't know if y'all could hear Bill. Somebody asked the question about reheating the water. Tea diehards would say no, only heat your water once. I do reuse my water, but not if it's been sitting there for a week. If it's been sitting there a day, it's yesterday's water still in my tea kettle, I'll reheat it and I'll use it. But purists would say no, only use it once.
What are some snacks you could have while you have tea?
What are some snacks? You guys got all kinds of great questions. Snacks. I mean, the simplest thing are scones. I think the proper term is scones, but we all call them scones. Fresh Market has these little scones that are about this big that just melt in your mouth. You pick up those. You pick up a little bag of biscotti. That's just a simple, easy tea time that you can have your little devotion time with a cup of tea and be quiet and maybe, say your prayers and stuff afterwards. But typically a traditional afternoon tea, you'll have sandwiches like cucumber sandwiches. Those are really popular. Little chicken salad. They're crustless. They're, about this big. You'll have a couple of sandwiches, and then there's savories. A savory might be something like a quiche. You could have a little cup of soup or a little shooter of soup. You would have your scones, and then you would have desserts. Now, another one of my pet peeves is if you go to a place and you have tea and they bring you 12 different kinds of cookies and 4 pies, and it's just way too many sweets. I don't care for that. And I love sugar. I'm a sugar addict, so I love sugar, but that's just too many. But you want to have 2 or maybe 1 or 2, I'd say 2 to 3 sweets of some sort. I love to have or an apple slice or a pear slice. So those are things kind of the typical tea party.
Are there teas that are used at certain seasons? Christmas tea or spring tea?
So you guys hear the questions that Bill's asking, or you want, Belina, would you like your job?
It is hard to hear Bill. Actually, this was my question. Are there teas that are used at certain seasons, like a Christmas tea or a spring tea?
There are. Sova again, and again, Harney and Sons, Twinings. What are some of the other tea companies? They come out with Christmas blends. A lot of times they'll have, spices, cinnamon, nutmeg, those kinds of things. In the fall, everything is pumpkin latte. There are even teas that are pumpkin latte. In the spring, there's, what are some of my favorite teas? One of my favorite fall teas is called Sweater Weather at Sova. They only carry it during the fall. Sova has Sweater Weather. Then my favorite Christmas tea is called Nutcracker. They have something called, in the spring, they have all kinds of like Easter themed or spring themed teas. So yes, they do change. Great questions. Good questions tonight. Go ahead, Belina, just rattle them off. Are we missing any other?
Is you said not Lipton. Can you explain why you don't recommend Lipton tea?
Lipton's just not big. There's so many wonderful teas out there. you know, you know, the rooibos, these are flavored teas. This one I have has almond. I love almond flavored anything. You know, Lipton's been around a really long time. They're a very successful company, you know, but it's like, oh, you can do better than that. But I don't care for Harney and Sons, and Harney and Sons puts their teas in little, almost like little silk sachets. But for some reason, I've just never had a Harney and Son tea that I really like. But obviously, they've been around a really long time and are very, very successful.
I saw in the chat that people were talking about if you do put milk in your tea, you're supposed to put the milk in the saucer first. Is this correct? And then you put the tea on top?
That's that is a point of contention. A lot of people they're and add your milk before or after. My thing is, and I side with those who advocate pour your tea into your teacup first. Maybe even try it to see how much milk you want to add. You know, because until you've tasted it, you might not know if you want just a smidgen of tea. I mean, excuse me, a smidgen of milk, or if you need more. But there's lots of controversy about that.
Yeah. Okay.
The other thing, there's one other thing I wanted to tell y'all about when we talked about etiquette. It was a little bit harder for Bill to get up, and you've seen me, you know, pick my cup up like so. And excuse me, I've got my tea bag hanging out. Because I'm sitting right here. If I was to get up and move around, or if I was at a tea where we're just kind of standing around, or if I'm sitting at a low table, I'm sitting at my coffee table, we're having tea on the sofa, you are supposed to bring your cup with you, okay? Don't be leaving your saucer way over there and your teacup are way over here and your saucer's way over there. So there's just another little thing. There are no tea police. Nobody's going to throw you out of any places for any of these things. But anyway, there's one more. Questions, other questions?
Let's see. Did you say one cannot taste the tea at Zorba? I would love to taste it before buying.
At Sova, yes, Sova. They usually have a tea, like whatever's the tea of the day, they will have samples of that. I don't know, if you ask them, they might make you, but they're not going to make you, unless they're doing a tea tasting, they're probably not going to make you a couple of samples of tea. But before COVID, you know, you could pull out the big container and you could smell it. And, you know, now they're not letting you stick your nose in things. So I don't know. So, but yeah, but you can at least look at the tea and see what it looks like. They will hold the container up to you now and sort of do this so you can still sort of smell it. But it's not quite like it used to be, but hopefully one day it will be. Are you asking that or somebody else asking that? Bill said that someone had asked about where to go for afternoon tea. Oh, this is something that we are lacking in Hampton Roads. There is, actually, it's right beside Sova. It's called, I believe it's called the English Rose Tea Room. It is not one of my favorite places. I never go there. I'm not saying it's not good. I'm not saying don't try it. Go and try it. We had one of our Virginia Tea Society events there, and they just were not very hospitable, and we just, yeah. Tell us more about the tea club, somebody wants to know. So the Virginia Tea Society, I think I joined maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I just happened to find out about it. I need to come back and tell y'all where to go for tea though. So don't let me forget that. The Virginia Tea Societies, I'm not sure, it's been around. I think we're getting ready to celebrate our 10th anniversary in 2021 or the 20th. I'm on the board. I'm supposed to know those things. So it's been around for a while. I found it by accident. They were having a tea at the Hill House Museum over in Portsmouth. It was in the paper. I found out about it that way. the Hill House Museum in Portsmouth, which was how I found out about the Tea Society, they do a nice tea. So I'll go back and try to answer both questions. The Virginia Tea Society, we do a different theme each month, and I've got some of my Tea Society friends here. We do a different theme. Needless, our last tea party, I think, was February of last year. We've done a couple of things virtually. If you're interested in joining, it is a new year, and we've got maybe 2 or 3 spots open for our membership. We do limited it because we find places to go that can accommodate us. We have like 70 members, or I think our limit is right around 70 members. And we will also often have 40 or 50 people at our teas. They're different themed. We might have a Nutcracker theme at Christmas. We might have, gingerbread men theme at Christmas. And this board does a fabulous job with the decor, and, everything's decorated. The menu is always different. We have our own Virginia Tea Society special blend that you can only get through the Tea Society. Sova blended it for us, but you can't buy it there. So if you get to join, I'll let you know about that. Or I'll get you some of that tea. So the teas are just really, really nice. We do wear hats. We do dress up. Fascinators are fun. So it's really, and it's really just about celebrating loveliness and this whole ritual of this, of this pretty, I like pretty things, and they are pretty fun teas. What else can I tell you about that? Other questions?
So there's a question about, have you been to afternoon tea in many places? Do you have a favorite? How do teas differ in other countries?
Yeah, I had tea in London. I've had tea in Paris. I've had tea in Rome. European desserts, and I'm sure there's somebody out there that can answer this question better than I can. European desserts aren't as sweet and sugary as ours, so that's one way they're different. But the ceremony and the ceremony of it all is pretty much like what we're used to. I mean, I call what I 3-tiered and the afternoon tea, I think that's the English tradition. I call it the English tea. They're pretty similar to that. I do love tea at the Jefferson in Richmond. They do a very nice job. You are in the lobby there with Mr. Jefferson. They do a very nice job, and I think they have resumed having their teas. The Willard in DC does a very nice job with their teas, and there used to be a little place, it's closed now, that was in DC, Georgetown, that I just really loved, but they've gone out of business. And that's the Willard, and that little place is really places. The Cavalier in Virginia Beach is doing some afternoon teas. They need to find somebody that knows what they're doing to come in and teach them how to do tea. So I'm trying to be politically correct. Beautiful, beautiful environment. I mean, but Bill and I've been there a time or two, and it's okay. There is a place called Stillwater House in Suffolk that's been around a couple of years. It has been several years since I have been, but they did a nice job. I'm still hoping one of these days that First Presbyterian Church is going to have a tea, and we're all going to have tea together. So maybe that will happen sometime when we can all be together. Where else? Oh, favorite places to have tea. One of my favorite places is the Hermitage Hotel in Nashville. If you ever go to Nashville, go to the Hermitage. Lovely. I made a list because I knew somebody would ask that question. Oh, North Carolina, the Carolina Inn, and in Chapel Hill, and the Washington Duke Inn. Both of those are hotels. Is it Raleigh or is it Durham? It's in Durham, the Washington Duke Inn. Lovely teas, lovely teas. That's about 3.5 hours. But if you're ever in that direction, they do a really nice job. What other questions? Tea Time magazine, yeah. I've got a couple of Tea Time magazines. If you become a fanatic like me and some of my tea friends, this is a great little magazine. It comes out every 2 months. You know, it's got tea places to go, tea education, fun stuff. This is another book I wanted to share with you guys. It's called The Art of Prayer and Tea and Thee. I have, like many of my books, I've started and I didn't get all the way through, but I wanted to see what I could learn about having tea and prayer. Tea and etiquette, if you want that. And if you're on Facebook, oh my gosh, there are so many tea groups that you can join. People are crazy with their teacups and their tea parties and all that kind of thing. Bill was going to show you guys this book when he was doing his little faux pas, no tooting at the tea table. We've already started collecting all these books for our 2 grandchildren now. I'm like, Jim Wood, I have a new grandson. So what other questions do you have? Have you all learned something? Shake your heads, unmute yourselves, talk to me, ask more questions. There's a lot. I can see that there's a lot of things in the chat, but I can't read and talk and listen all at the same time.
Yeah, well, there were some comments about the Cavalier, but I think you covered that. Also, new owner at Stillwater House and have heard it's great.
Oh,
Heritage
good.
United Methodist Church has an annual tea. That's very nice. I'm just wondering about the tea society that you're in. Is it something that you have to be a member of the tea society to go to a tea, or can you sign up to come to a tea? Tell me more about that.
Okay, great. Yeah, great question. I could take you as a guest. We have a rule, I think some teas we are allowed to bring guests and some teas we are not. Members are always given priority because, again, we're having trouble finding venues that are big enough to support 70 people if all 70 come out. So that's one reason we've sort of got a lock on our membership right now. And like I said, I know of maybe 2 or 3 openings. So Velina knows how to get in touch with me if you guys, if you guys need to. And of course, if you have any other questions or anything I can help you with, I could take you as a guest. But other than that, you would have to join the Tea Society to be able to go to these teas. It's not anything that we try to make money on. We just try to cover the cost of our tea and our decorations and our menu and stuff. But it's getting harder and harder because if you make a little afternoon tea, it's kind of labor intensive. Those little sandwiches are cute, but if you're going to start cutting crust off of 20 sandwiches and stuff, they're labor intensive. So they tend to get we spend on average probably $35 for a tea at the Tea Society. Like I said, we meet once a month. Our teas are on Saturday. Sometimes we have, like I said, different themes all the time. Sometimes we have, like we had when Meghan and Harry got married, we had a royal wedding tea that was a lot of fun and did some things. We had a golf themed tea to try to get some of our husbands or spouse, the guys to come out with us. And my husband's a really good sport. He does have tea with me. And yes, a lot of times when we go to teas, especially in the United States, not so much in Europe, but you'll see more men in Europe having tea. But wow, I mean, he could give you, if the guys are on here, he would give you, if you want to, the way to a woman's heart is to take her to tea. So. But what else can I tell you about the Tea Society? Just get in touch with me. We don't have a Facebook page or a website because, again, we kind of stay full up with our members. But if you're interested, I don't know when we're going to be back in person, to tell you the truth. We are meeting this Saturday virtually. We're playing a little tea game on Zoom, and we've tried to, kind of like everybody else, we've tried to stay connected and still have our tea and have fun. But man, that's one of the things I really miss through COVID. One of the several things in my life that I miss. Yeah. So,
Sandra, could you say a little bit of I'm kind of just interested in this. what kind of teapots would you recommend? I mean, my mom has a collection of teapots. They're absolutely beautiful.
Ooh.
But what, do you recommend porcelain? Do you recommend china? Do you recommend other ceramic kinds of teapots? I mean, they're so beautiful, but what's the most useful?
And I think that's a hard question. I'm not sure. I guess my answer is I think any teapot kind of works. There's something called the Brown Betty, which is one of my pottery friends would know this better than I do, but it's an English thing. It's just I guess it's pottery of some sort. It's just called a Brown Betty, and it's not anything fancy or pretty. I have China teapots. I've got like novelty fun, teapots. I think they all work the same. There are, things like this that you can use to put your teapots on to keep your tea warm. This has got a little candle in there. You can do that. Oops. These are tea cozies that you can use to put around your teapots. The thing that you want to remember if you're making yourself, my goal is just to have you have a cup of tea. But if you want to use a teapot, don't leave your tea in there because it will get bitter. It will get astringent, dry tasting to your tongue, and you won't enjoy it. But get the teapot, in China, in Japan, I think they use, well, I can't speak to that. I saw
Miyako.
Yes, Miyako can probably speak to that. I've got all kinds of teapots. I think they all work just fine.
Yeah. I think I just agree that how to say, drain all the liquid from the teapot. I think to save it so it won't get bitter. It really applies to any kind of tea.
Yes. Yeah, it's the tea that's been sitting too long that gets, that turns things bitter, or the water. It's, sometimes when we go to the beach or different beaches you go to, they sometimes have bad water at the beach. It tastes kind of slimy, or it's real, I don't know if it's hard or soft. Soft water, I think, is what feels slimy. If you've got that kind of water, it's going to make a difference with your tea. But I've never heard anything bad about any. I know some of you guys are probably in Virginia Beach or different places. I've not heard anything bad about the water, but like I said, you can buy spring water and use that. I think maybe we can have a Zoom sometime that we can share our favorite teapots or bring your favorite teacups or whatever. I love going to teas where, and we did this for the women's retreat a couple of years ago, where we said everybody bring their favorite teacup, and I came down and we had tea. Now that was scripture tea from scripturetea.com, and it was in a little bag, and I thought that tea was really good, and I love that because it had a little scripture verse on the tea tag. I was actually looking at that again the other day. I haven't had any since we did that, but I love hearing the stories like this is, and I don't know if my cousin Wendy, twice removed under the table, was able to join us tonight or not, but I have a collection of teacups from friends and family, and this is from my cousin Wendy and her mother. Both have this china, and so and the other thing you asked about, Christmas teas or fall teas or whatever, I kind of like to have a teacup with whatever is going on. And this to me looks like a good January tea. But what I was gonna say is I love going to a tea where then you get to hear the stories. Oh, this was my mother's teacup, or this was this was part of my wedding china, or, I found this yesterday at the CHKD thrift for $2.50. I love hearing those stories. So I think it's really fun. I have a lot of teacups and I have a lot of dishes. I have my grandmother's china, I have my mother's china. So I can't wait till you guys can come to my house and we can have tea. I can use all my teacups. Or you can bring yours and I can hear your stories. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I might hold you to it, Sandra. I definitely want to see your collection.
That would be so much fun. So much fun. Point in having, I'm a good Southern girl. There's no point in having pretty things if you're not going to share it with your friends. That's what it's all about. It doesn't matter if they get broken or, I think cleaning silver is an act of love. I guess I'm crazy, but it's like that Bible verse that I read. All things lovely and pure, and tea's just one of them. So, and I'll be the first to admit, and gentlemen, I do try to start my day with some spiritual readings and prayer time and everything. It's usually with my cup of coffee. My tea doesn't come until later in the day, but it is a great way to start your day.
Awesome. Just a couple other messages on here. I think it's just good advice. I like to preheat both the teapot and the cup before using.
Yes.
I don't like lukewarm tea. That's from Lynn True. I'm assuming that she's part of the society, actually.
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Other is, yes, you should warm your pot before pouring the water. And then Christina shared a link. Christina, can you talk about this link that you shared in the chat room?
Yes, where I was born in northwestern Germany, which is near the Dutch border, they have a really rich Ostfriesen tea tradition. So because they were near the Dutch people trading with the East India Company, they got tea fairly early, and they drink really, they have really good tap water. So the Ostfriesen people are actually known to take their water to wherever they go because they love their tea so much. But it's really strong tea, and they keep on adding water to the cup and put a layer of cream on top of the tea. They have a special spoon for that. It's really shallow, so they sort of slither that on top, and they drink the tea through the cream. And they have what we call rock sugar. So they always put these rock sugar, very small cup, really big piece of rock sugar, and really strong tea. And contrary to Sandra's spoon thing, as long as you leave your spoon in the cup, you get a refill. If you put it out, that means I don't want any more.
Interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah, we could talk about teas around the world. I've got a book that's called Teas Around the World, and there are some differences, but like I said, the few places that I've been, it was basically the same. What else? What were we just talking about too? What were the other questions that we had?
That's pretty much it, Sandra. When we're coming close to our time, do you have any closing words for us?
Bill said, just drink tea. No, it's just a lovely way to start your day, a lovely a thing that you can get into. And like my reading said it all. We need some quiet from the chaos of our lives. Our society values busy, so much. And this is just, if this will force you to take a few minutes of your day and just go through this, I think it will add a lot to your life. And I'm so glad that somebody mentioned, warming up your teacup and warming up the pot. That does make a difference. Versus putting your hot tea into a cold cup.
Sandra, when you have your tea, I'll bring the scones.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I need to make a note of that.
And I know some of my English friends told me that the brown Betty, you've got to have a round teapot so the water flows around.
Oh,
That's what the English say. Yeah.
Interesting.
What, and that brings up a really good point. When I was showing you guys these things, that the strainers or whatever to use in your teapot, I wanted to show you this. So I made Bill and I a cup of green tea last night with this little teapot that holds 4 teaspoons of tea. And I saved this green tea to show you because look how much it expands. And just like Deborah, is that your correct name?
Yes.
Anyway, I hope so.
Yeah,
anyway, look how much it expanded. And like she was just saying with the brown Betty having a round teapot so that those tea leaves can expand. That's how much 4 little teaspoons of this green tea turned into this last night. So that's why you need something big enough for your tea leaves to expand. Your black teas and the rooibos teas won't expand like that, but that was green tea. And it needs that room to bloom.
So the water,
and of course, if you brew your tea in your teapot, you're going to need, like a strainer that you can strain your tea, through or whatever. And if you have to let it sit, it's gonna oversteep. Speaking of which, that's one of the reasons I like the rooibos, the red bush. I like the rooibos tea because it's hard to oversteep.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sandra. We are at
Thank
time.
you.
It's been so great to be with all of you, and so fun to learn more about tea. Yay! So thanks for being with us. I put in the chat box my email address. If you want me to connect you to Sandra, I'm glad.
Yeah.
Just shoot
So
me
much for
an email,
coming.
and I'll get you connected.
Thank you.